The Galactic Concord had lasted for 300 years. It was a union of 47 different species spread across 2 million star systems. They traded with each other. They protected each other. They built a civilization that seemed like it would last forever. Humanity was the youngest member of this great alliance. They had earned their place only 100 years ago. Many of the older species still looked at them like children playing at a game they did not understand. The human fleet numbered 12,000 ships. It was a respectable number, but nothing compared to the shimmering armadas of the Valori or the massive warships of the Kethari. When humans walked into council meetings, the older species smiled politely and listened to their opinions with patience. The way a parent listens to a child talking about dreams. Admiral Chen Weilin had grown used to those smiles. She was 63 years old and had served in the Earth Navy for 40 years. She commanded the ESS Prometheus, the flagship of humanity's fleet. And she had learned long ago that respect was not given. It was earned. She did not mind that the galaxy thought little of her people. She believed that one day they would have a chance to prove themselves. That chance came sooner than anyone expected. It started with silence. The outer systems along the edge of the galaxy went quiet. At first, no one noticed. The rim worlds were far away, and communication delays were normal. But then a week passed with no contact. Then 2 weeks. Then a month. The entire planets that had been home to billions of people simply stopped responding. The Concord sent scout ships to investigate. None of them returned. Fear began to spread through the Alliance. The leaders of each species met in emergency sessions, arguing about what could cause such destruction. Some believed it was a new weapon. Others thought it might be a disease. A few whispered about old legends. Stories of darkness that came from the spaces. Between galaxies, the truth was worse than any of them imagined. Damaged probe managed to transmit footage before it was destroyed. The Concord Council gathered to watch. And what they saw changed everything. The enemy had no name, because no one had ever survived long enough to give them one. They appeared as a swarm, billions of creatures moving together like a single mind. Some were small, the size of fighters. Others were enormous, like living moons that drifted through space. They were made of metal and flesh twisted together, machines that breathed and organic things that calculated. They did not conquer. They did not negotiate. They simply consumed. Every world they touched was stripped bare, all matter absorbed into their endless hunger. They left behind only dead rocks and empty space. Humanity would later call them the Hollow. The Council acted quickly. They ordered the formation of the Combined Defense Fleet, the largest military force in galactic history. Every member species contributed their finest ships and their bravest crews. When the final count was made, the fleet numbered 180,000 warships. It was a force that could crush any enemy ever known. Earth was asked to contribute, but they could. Admiral Chen stood before the United Earth Council and made her case. She wanted to send everything. Every ship, every soldier, every resource humanity could spare. The politicians looked at her with concern. If Earth sent its entire navy, the home system would be defenseless. It was a terrible risk. Chen listened to their worries and then spoke. "The Hollow are not coming for the rim worlds," she said. "They are coming for all of us. They move toward the core, toward the heart of our civilization. If the rim falls, the core falls. If the core falls, Earth falls. We can wait here and hope someone else stops them, or we can stand with our allies and fight. I know which choice I prefer." The vote was close, but it passed. Earth would send its entire fleet. 12,000 ships and 2.3 million personnel departed for the edge of the galaxy. On the day they left, crowds gathered at every spaceport. Families said goodbye to sons and daughters, husbands and wives. Children waved at the sky as the ships rose into the darkness. It was a moment of pride and fear mixed together, the kind of moment that defines a civilization. Admiral Nelmal Chen stood on the bridge of the Prometheus and watched Earth shrink behind her. She did not know if she would ever see it again. She did not know how many of her people would survive what was coming, but she knew they were doing the right thing. That was enough. The journey to the rim took 3 months. The combined fleet traveled through the great shipping lanes of the Concorde, passing stations and colonies that cheered as they flew by. News reports across the galaxy celebrated the Armada. Commentators spoke confidently about victory. The Hollow were terrible, they said, but nothing could stand against the united might of 47 species. Admiral Verthax of the Cathari was given supreme command of the coalition forces. He was ancient by human standards, over 200 years old, and he had fought in a dozen wars. His people were warriors by tradition, and they believed that strength and tactics would overcome any obstacle. He looked at the human contingent with something close to pity. Their ships were functional but plain, lacking the elegance of Valori design or the power of Cathari engineering. He assigned them to the support lines, away from the main fighting. Chen accepted the assignment without complaint. She knew that arguments would accomplish nothing. Actions would speak louder than words. The fleet arrived at the Khazari Nebula, strategic choke point that the Hollow would have to pass through to reach the inner systems. It was a good position, easy to defend. Verthax arranged his forces with precision, placing his strongest ships at the front and his support vessels behind. He was confident. He had planned for every possibility, but no one had planned for what came next. The Hollow arrived on the morning of the 4th day. They emerged from the darkness like a tide of locusts, so many that the scanners could not count them. Millions, perhaps billions. They filled the space between stars, blocking out the light of distant suns. They moved in perfect unison, every drone and carrier and swarm acting as one. Admiral Verthax looked at the readings and felt something he had not felt in 200 years. Fear. He gave the order to engage. And the greatest battle in galactic history began. Ships fired weapons that could crack planets. Drones exploded by the thousands. The void of space filled with light and fire and death, and through it all, the Hollow kept coming. Admiral Chen watched from her position in the support line. She watched the mighty Valori cruisers disappear under waves of attackers. She watched the proud Cathari dreadnoughts burn. She watched the greatest fleet ever assembled begin to break apart, and she knew with a cold certainty that this was only the beginning. The first 6 hours of battle gave the Concorde hope. Admiral Verthax commanded his forces with skill and precision. The Valori cruisers danced through enemy formations, their weapons striking with deadly accuracy. The Cathari dreadnoughts unleashed firepower that could destroy small moons, cutting paths through the swarm. Even the smaller species contributed, their ships working together in formations practiced over centuries of alliance. The Hollow died by the thousands, then by the tens of thousands. Their broken drones drifted through space like metal rain, and cheers echoed across communication channels as victory seemed possible, but something was wrong. Admiral Todd studied the battle data from her position in the support line. She ran the numbers again and again, hoping she had made a mistake. She had not. For every Hollow drone the Concorde destroyed, 3 more appeared from the depths of the swarm. The enemy was not just attacking, they were testing, learning, adapting. She tried to warn command. Her messages were acknowledged but ignored. Verthax was too busy coordinating the main assault to listen to a human admiral stationed in the rear. The tide turned in the 7th hour. Verthax ordered a tactical withdrawal. His ships had been fighting continuously, and they needed time to repair and rearm. It was the correct decision by every military standard. It was also exactly what the Hollow wanted. As the Concorde fleet pulled back, the swarm moved, not forward, but around. While everyone focused on the battle ahead, billions of Hollow units had been circling the flanks. They closed in from the sides and the rear, surrounding the Allied forces in a trap of their own making. The elegant Valori cruisers, designed for quick strikes and rapid movement, found themselves swarmed from every direction. Their shields flickered and died under the weight of endless attackers. The mighty Cathari dreadnoughts, built to dominate in frontal assaults, became slow targets for suicide units that burrowed through their armor like worms through flesh. Panic spread through the fleet. Ships that had fought bravely minutes before now scattered in all directions, desperate to escape the closing ring. Communication channels filled with screams and prayers and final goodbyes. In 18 hours, combined fleet lost 40% of its strength. 70,000 ships destroyed. Hundreds of millions of lives gone. Admiral Verthax transmitted an emergency broadcast to the entire galaxy. His voice, once strong and confident, now trembled with despair. We underestimated them. We cannot hold. All Concord worlds must begin evacuation protocols immediately. This is not a war we can win. The words hit like a physical blow. Across the fleet, crews began to break. Some ships turned and fled toward home. Others broadcast final messages to their families, accepting death. A few simply shut down their engines and waited for the end. On the Prometheus, Admiral Chen listened to the cascade of surrender and retreat. She watched the tactical display as Allied ships scattered like leaves in a storm. The Hollow did not chase them. They did not need to. They simply continued forward, an unstoppable wave that would consume everything in its path. Chen closed her eyes and thought of Earth. She thought of the crowds that had gathered to watch them leave. She thought of the children waving at the sky. She thought of everything humanity had built and everything they still hoped to become. Then she opened her eyes and opened a channel to every human vessel in the fleet. All Earth ships. This is Admiral Chen. I am issuing new orders. We are not leaving. Silence on the channel. Then Captain Okafor of the ESS Lagos responded. Admiral, the battle is lost. Command has ordered retreat. I heard the order, Chen said. I am choosing to ignore it. The Hollow are moving toward the core worlds. If no one stops them, they will reach the civilian populations within weeks. Billions of people, Captain. Billions of lives that depend on someone buying them time to evacuate. We cannot defeat them, another captain said. You saw what happened to the main fleet? I am not asking us to defeat them. I am asking us to slow them down. Every hour we hold is another hour for families to reach evacuation ships. Every day we fight is another day for the Concord to find another way. We are not going to win this battle, but we can make our deaths mean something. The channel remained silent for a long moment. Then, one by one, voices began to respond. Slagos standing by, ESS, Johannesburg ready, ESS Jenny, acknowledging, ESS Normandy with you, Admiral. All 12,000 human ships reported and not one chose to run. Chen felt a warmth in her chest that she had not expected, pride, love, gratitude for the people she served with. She allowed herself to feel it for just a moment before pushing it aside. There was work to do. All ships form up on the Prometheus. We are moving to the narrowest point of the nebula. We will create a wall that the Hollow must break through. Make them pay for every inch. The human fleet began to move. While their allies fled in all directions, the ships of Earth consolidated into a single, tight formation. They positioned themselves at the choke point, a barrier of metal and determination standing between the swarm and the core worlds beyond. The Hollow noticed. Sensors detected the concentrated resistance, and the swarm began to shift. Billions of units turned away from the scattered Allied ships and focused on the human formation. The small fleet that the Cathari had dismissed as insignificant now became the primary. Target Admiral Chen watched the swarm approach on her tactical display. It looked like a wall of death moving through space, so vast that it blotted out the stars behind it. She picked up the fleet-wide communicator and spoke one last time. I will not lie to you. Many of us will not survive what is coming, but I want you to know that I am proud to serve with every single one of you. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity is made of. Today, we stand. The first wave of Hollow units reached weapon range. The human fleet opened fire, and so began the longest. 3 days in human history, the galaxy watched in. Disbelief. News networks across the Concord had been broadcasting the retreat. They showed the broken fleets limping home. They showed politicians making speeches about evacuation plans and emergency measures. They showed experts explaining why resistance was impossible, why the Hollow could not be stopped, why the only hope was to flee. Then they noticed something strange. A single formation remained at the Cassari Nebula. 12,000 ships arranged in a defensive wall, not retreating, not scattering, simply holding position as billions of hollow units closed in around them. The broadcasts shifted. Commentators fell silent. Across 1,000,000 worlds, people stopped what they were doing and stared at their screens. The human fleet had stayed. The first wave hit like a hammer. Hollow drones crashed against the formation in numbers that should have overwhelmed them in minutes. Ships exploded. Shields failed. The darkness of space filled with fire and debris. But the humans did not break. "Admiral," Chun commanded from the bridge of the Prometheus, her voice calm and steady even as chaos raged around her. She had studied human military history her entire life. She knew about Thermopylae, where 300 soldiers held a pass against an army. She knew about Rorke's Drift, where a handful of men defended a station against thousands. She knew that sometimes the only victory available was the choice to stand, when standing seemed impossible. The human ships did not have the elegant technology of the Valori. They did not have the raw firepower of the Cathari. What they had was something simpler and stranger. They had redundancy. Human engineers had designed their ships expecting everything to go wrong. Every system had a backup. Every backup had a backup. When primary power failed, secondary generators activated. When computers went offline, manual controls took over. When hull breaches killed entire sections, damage control teams sealed them off and kept fighting. The Hollow had learned to predict the behavior of Concord species. They knew that when ships lost 30% function, crews began evacuation. When shields dropped, vessels retreated. When casualties reached certain thresholds, commanders surrendered. Humans did not follow these patterns. The ESS Defiant lost its main engine core in the 8th hour. By every standard calculation, the ship should have been dead. Instead, the engineering crew rerouted power through secondary systems, then through life support, then through anything that could carry a current. They kept their weapons firing for another 11 hours. Running on emergency lights and recycled air, the S. Normandy was boarded by hollow infiltrators, biomechanical horrors that crawled through breached holes to consume crews from within. The Marines on board met them in corridors and cargo bays and engine rooms. They fought with rifles, then with pistols, then with knives, then with their bare hands. The battle lasted 11 hours. When it ended, every infiltrator was dead. So were most of the Marines. But the ship remained in human hands. Captain Yusuf of the ESS Lagos watched his destroyer take hit after hit. His weapons were gone. His engines were failing. His ship was dying around him. He could have ordered evacuation. The escape pods might have carried some of his crew to safety. Instead, he called engineering. "Can we still maneuver?" "Barely," came the reply. "Maybe one good burn left." "That is enough." He opened a channel to the fleet. "Lagos to all ships. I am making a run at their carrier. Tell my daughter her father did not run." The Lagos accelerated into the heart of the swarm. Hollow drones tried to stop it, but Yusuf weaved through their fire with the last strength of his dying ship. He aimed for the largest carrier in range. A nightmare vessel the size of a small moon. The collision created an explosion visible from 1,000 kilometers away. The carrier broke apart. Hundreds of thousands of drones that depended on it went dark. One man, one ship, had taken more hollow with him than entire fleets had managed before. The story of Captain Walda. Yusuf spread through the remaining human ships. It became a rallying cry. When crews felt their courage failing, they remembered his words. They remembered that surrender was not an option. Day turned into night, and night into day, and still the humans fought. Ships fell one by one, but those that remained tightened their formation and kept firing. The Hollow threw wave after wave against them, and each wave broke against the wall of stubborn, desperate resistance. Commander Adora Okonkwo, Chief Science Officer aboard the ESS Darwin, analyzed the battle data during brief pauses in the fighting. She noticed something peculiar. The Hollow were adapting to human tactics as they had adapted to everything else. But they were adapting slowly. Much slower than they had adapted to the Valori or the Cathari. She brought her findings to Admiral Chen. They learn from patterns, she explained. Every species they have fought followed logical behavior. Retreat when damaged. Preserve resources. Prioritize survival. They absorbed those patterns and used them to predict enemy movements. And we are not following those patterns, Chen said. No. We are doing things they have never seen. Fighting when we should run. Dying when we should surrender. Our behavior makes no sense to them. They cannot predict what we will do next because we do not follow the rules they expect. Chen nodded slowly. Then we keep doing what we are doing. We keep being unpredictable. We keep being human. On the fourth day, with only 300 human ships remaining, something unprecedented happened. The Hollow stopped advancing. The swarm did not retreat. It did not disperse. It simply paused, holding position as if waiting for something. Billions of units hung in space like a frozen wave, motionless and silent. Admiral Chen stared at the tactical display, her exhausted mind struggling to understand. In all the records of Hollow encounters, no one had ever reported this behavior. Commander Okonkwo looked at the same data and reached a conclusion that would change everything. They are confused, she said. For the first time in their existence, they do not know what to do. The Hollow had consumed countless civilizations. They had faced every tactic, every strategy, every desperate defense. They had always won, but they had never faced anything like humanity. They had never faced an enemy willing to die to the last soul for a cause greater than survival, and for the first time. The invincible swarm hesitated. Admiral Chen stood on the auxiliary bridge of the Prometheus. The main bridge was gone, torn away by a Hollow strike that had killed 30 of her crew. She had lost her left arm in the attack. The wounds sealed by emergency medical systems that kept her alive but could not stop the pain. She commanded now from a secondary station surrounded by flickering screens and exhausted officers. 300 ships. That was all that remained of the human fleet. 300 from 12,000. The survivors were battered and broken, running on emergency power and desperate hope. But they were still there. Still fighting. Still refusing to die. And the Hollow had stopped. Chen stared at the tactical display, her mind racing. The swarm hung motionless in space, billions of units frozen in place. In 4 days of constant battle, she had never seen them pause for more than a few seconds to recalculate. Now they had been still for almost an hour. Commander Okonkwo arrived on the auxiliary bridge. Her uniform stained with smoke and blood. She had been helping with damage control on the lower decks. I have a theory, she said without preamble. The Hollow are not just machines. They are not just biological either. They are something in between, a kind of collective intelligence that learns from everything it encounters. Every species they have consumed has taught them something new, and they have not learned how to deal with us, Chen said. Exactly. Every civilization they have faced followed the same basic rules. Protect yourself. Preserve your resources. Survive at any cost. Those rules make sense from an evolutionary perspective. They are logical. The Hollow learned to exploit that logic. Chen understood. But we threw logic away. You threw logic away, Okonkwo agreed. The Hollow cannot predict an enemy that does not behave rationally. They have no algorithm for opponents who will die to the last soul rather than retreat. Right now, they are trying to understand us, and they cannot. Chen felt a flicker of hope, quickly suppressed. How long until they adapt? Okonkwo's expression darkened. Hours, maybe. They are the most adaptable entity in the galaxy. They have consumed thousands of species and absorbed all their knowledge. Eventually, they will find a way to counter our behavior. They will learn that unpredictability has its own patterns. Then we need to end this before they adapt. Admiral, we have 300 ships. They have billions of units. How exactly do you propose we end this? Chen was silent for a long moment. She thought of her crew, the men and women who had fought beside her for 4 impossible days. She thought of the families waiting back on Earth, praying for news that would never come. She thought of all the things she had wanted to do with her life, all the plans she had made. Then she thought of the core worlds, billions of people depending on them, children who deserved a chance to grow up. civilizations that had not yet reached their potential. "There is a plan," she said quietly. "It was developed in secret 3 years ago. We called it Operation Threshold. It was never meant to be used," Okonkwo waited. "Every human ship carries an antimatter reactor. If we overload them simultaneously in a coordinated pattern, we can create a cascading detonation. The explosion will tear a hole in local spacetime, a rift that will collapse and drag everything within range into dimensional shear." Okonkwo's face went pale. "Everything within range, including us, including the Hollow. All of them. Admiral, that is not a battle plan. That is mass suicide. It is the only way to make sure. If we retreat now, they will adapt. They will continue to ward the core worlds. Everything we sacrificed will mean nothing. But if we can destroy them here, all of them, then the galaxy survives. The Concord survives. Humanity survives, even if we do not." Okonkwo stared at her commanding officer. She saw the exhaustion in Chen's eyes, the pain from her wounds, the weight of every death she had witnessed over the past 4 days. She also saw something else. Certainty. The crews will need to choose, Okonkwo said finally. "They deserve that much." Chen nodded. "They will choose." She opened a channel to every remaining human ship and explained the situation clearly and honestly. She told them about Operation Threshold. She told them what it would cost. She told them they could leave with honor if they wished, carry the battle data back to Earth, ensure that humanity's sacrifice would be remembered. When she finished, she waited. The responses came one by one. S. Darwin, staying. S. Avalon, staying. ESS Johannesburg, staying. Snowpalo, staying. Of 300 ships, 208-29 chose to remain. 11 chose to leave, to carry the story home. Chen thanked them for their service and watched them turn toward distant stars. The crews of the remaining ships spent the next hour preparing. Engineers calibrated reactor systems for controlled overload. Officers recorded final messages for their families. Some prayed, some wept. Some simply sat in silence, making peace with what was coming. At 0347 Galactic Standard Time, Admiral Chen transmitted the final order. "All ships initiate Operation Threshold. It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve with you. See you on the other side." 189 antimatter reactors began their overload sequence simultaneously. The energy buildup was visible on sensors across the nebula, a growing storm of power that made the Hollow finally react. The swarm surged forward, trying to stop what they suddenly understood was happening. They were too late. The detonation was unlike anything that Galaxy had ever witnessed. A wall of light erupted from the human formation, spreading outward in all directions. It tore through the Hollow swarm, vaporizing billions of units in seconds. The fabric of spacetime twisted and screamed as the rift opened, a wound in reality that pulled everything toward its hungry center. Ships vanished. Drones vanished. The great carrier organisms that had seemed invincible vanished. The Hollow, the enemy that had consumed 1,000 worlds, ceased to exist in a single moment of brilliant, defiant light. The explosion was visible from star systems 12 light-years away. When the light faded, the Kasari Nebula was empty. No Hollow remained. No human ships remained. Only debris and silence and the slowly healing wound in space, where 218 vessels had written their names in fire. Of the 11 ships that had chosen to leave, only 9 completed the journey home. 2 were too damaged to survive the long voyage back to Earth, but 9 made it. 9 ships carrying the story of what humanity had done, and that was enough. The journey home took 6 months. The 9 surviving ships traveled slowly, their engines damaged and their systems failing. The S-Odyssey lost its main sensor array crossing through Valori space. The ESS Remembrance had to shut down half its decks to conserve power. The ESS Darwin limped along on backup systems, its hull held together by emergency patches and desperate engineering. But they kept going. They had a story to tell. The galaxy had already seen the footage. Before Operation Threshold, Admiral Chen had ordered all battle data transmitted to Concord Command. Every species had watched the human fleet make its stand. They had seen the 3 days of impossible resistance. They had seen the final moment when 218 ships chose death over retreat. The news spread to every corner of the Concord. On Velori Prime, the proud warrior poets composed epics about the human sacrifice. On Cathari homeworlds, where strength was valued above all else, admirals who had once dismissed humanity now spoke their names with reverence. On 1,000 different planets and 1,000 different languages, people told the story of the ships that stayed. Admiral Verthax, the Cathari commander who had led the combined fleet to its initial defeat, resigned his position. In his final address, he spoke words that were broadcast across the galaxy. I have commanded fleets for 200 years. I believed I understood courage. I understood nothing. Humanity taught me what it truly means to stand against the darkness. I am not worthy to speak their names. The Concord Council elected a new High Chancellor, a Velori diplomat named Sorel, who had argued for years that humanity deserved greater respect. Her first act was to propose a motion declaring Earth's Navy the greatest military force in galactic history. It passed unanimously. Meanwhile, the 9 ships continued their journey. Commander Adora Okonkwo commanded the small fleet now. She had been the highest-ranking officer to survive, a fact that weighed on her every moment. She spent the long voyage reviewing the battle data, writing reports, and recording testimonies from the 847 survivors. 847. That was all that remained of the 2.3 million who had departed. Earth 6 months earlier, Okonkwo learned their stories. She learned about the engineering teams who had kept broken ships fighting long past their limits. She learned about the medical officers who had worked without rest for days, saving every life they could. She learned about the young officers who had never seen combat before and had become heroes in the span of hours. She learned about Admiral Chen, who had held the fleet together through force of will alone, who had made the hardest decision any commander had ever faced, who had given the order knowing it would kill her and everyone she loved. Okonkwo recorded it all. The galaxy would remember. When the 9 ships finally entered the Sol system, they were met by something unexpected. Sensors detected vessels ahead, thousands of them. For one terrible moment, Okonkwo thought the Hollow had somehow survived, that the sacrifice had been for nothing. Then she saw the identification signals, Velori Kethari, species from every corner of the Concord. Over 50,000 ships had gathered in Earth's solar system, forming an honor guard that stretched from Jupiter to Mars. The Concords knew. High Chancellor transmitted a message as the human ships passed the outer planets. We came to witness the return of heroes. We came to say what words cannot express. You saved us. Your sacrifice gave us hope when hope seemed lost. For as long as this galaxy endures, we will remember what humanity did at the Kazari Nebula. The 9 ships continued inward, passing through the ranks of alien vessels. On every ship they passed, crews stood at attention. Some saluted in the human fashion they had learned just for this moment. Others sang traditional songs of honor from their home cultures. A few simply watched in silence, tears streaming down faces that looked nothing like human. Faces but felt the same emotions. Earth was waiting. The planet had known for months that the fleet was returning. The surviving families had been identified and notified. Memorials had been prepared. The world had been in mourning since the news of Operation Threshold arrived. But now, as the 9 ships descended through the atmosphere, something changed. People filled the streets of every city on Earth. They gathered on rooftops and in parks and along coastlines. Billions of human beings watched the sky as the battered, broken ships came home. The vessels landed at the Geneva spaceport, the same place they had departed from over a year ago. The same platform. The same sky. Everything was the same, and nothing was the same. Commander Okonkwo walked down the landing ramp first. Behind her came the survivors. 846 men and women who had witnessed the impossible and lived to tell the story. They moved slowly, many of them supported by medical equipment. All of them carrying wounds that would never fully heal. The crowd waited in silence. World leaders and Concord ambassadors stood together on the platform. Cameras broadcast the moment to every corner of the galaxy. Then one voice rose from somewhere in the crowd. A single person began to clap. Another joined, then another, and suddenly the silence broke into thunder. Applause rolled across the spaceport like a wave. People cheered and wept and called out the names of those who had not returned. Okonkwo stopped at the center of the platform. She looked out at the sea of faces, human and alien alike, and felt the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on her. She was not supposed to be here. Chen should have been the one making the speech. Yusuf should have been standing beside her. So many should have lived, but they had not. So she would speak for them. "We did not go to the Kessari Nebula to become heroes," she began, her voice carrying across the silent crowd. "We went because it was right. Because we believed that some things matter more than survival. Freedom matters. Hope matters. The future of every child in every species who deserves a chance to grow up under peaceful stars matters." She paused, fighting to control her voice. "We lost almost everything. 2.3 million of us departed. 847 returned. I will carry their names with me until I die. But they gave their lives for this moment. For a galaxy that now knows the darkness can be stopped. For the proof that no matter how vast the night, a single line of stubborn, foolish, determined humans can hold it back." She looked up at the sky, at the stars that twinkled beyond the daylight, at the vastness of the galaxy that humanity had saved. "We are still here. Not as many as before, not as strong as before, but still here. Still standing, still human." The crowd erupted again, cheering and crying and reaching toward the survivors as if trying to touch something holy in the years that followed. Monuments rose on every Concord world. The story of the human stand became a legend taught to children across the galaxy. When species faced difficult decisions, they asked themselves what humanity would do. When courage failed, they remembered the ships that stayed. The 9 surviving vessels were preserved in eternal orbit around Earth. Silent sentinels and eternal reminders of what had been sacrificed and what had been saved, and across the galaxy. A new saying spread. It was spoken in 100 languages by 100 different species. But the meaning was always the same. When the hollow came, humanity did not run.